I think, welcome everyone. And I think we need to begin today with a tribute to Steve Paxton, who was my teacher and who was someone who was instrumental in the formation of contact improvisation. Indeed, it would not have existed but for him. I was very luckily part of the origination of it, the opening, the ideas that germinated, that came together to create contact improvisation. So I was able to be part of the questioning that was going on. And from that, I came to understand how important questions are. Understanding within the process of dancing, of moving, of engaging with someone or something, that area of not knowing, constantly knowing what it is that you don't know, or seeking to know what you don't know. Seeking, what don't I know? Not necessarily seeking for the answers, but seeking to be engaged in asking what's possible here. I'm changing my computer so I'm not leaning forward. I was not enjoying that. So Steve opened up the world to me, and I was thinking recently that what he did, whereas I at that point, when I met Steve, I was a modern dancer. I thought I was going to go into a modern dance company and do modern dance for life. And it was a passion. I loved it. And I was particularly excited by the work of Jose Limon, whose fall and recovery was very weighted. So I was interested in that aspect that's waiting. And yet, every teacher, including Jose, that I had, including Judith Dunn, who was a dream, worked with dance improvisation. And I adored Judith, and I adore what she brought to dance and what she brought to me. And yet, every one of those dancers were working with dance, first of all, as a visual art form that required kinesthetic capacity and capability. But the end result had to do with what it looked like. Judith's work wasn't specifically that. It had a very powerful auditory listening sense of dance's musicality, and how that music has compositional framing and is a compositional organizer. And yet Steve, when I got to him, was interested in something completely different. His interest was in what it is that people do, what we can know, what can happen when we engage with with dance rather, as a sense of felt physics. How does the body engage with the earth? How does the body engage in he had a kind of science. His first interest in magnesium was in reflexive action. But by the time he got to Bennington, he was still interested in reflexive action, although he started working with women finally, meaning me. And then eventually other women. we were primarily, Bennington was primarily a women's college. There were some men who had been admitted along with my class. So this was my third year of Bennington when Steve came. And his interest was in how is it we engage so that our work, so that our actions are appropriately functional to what it is we're doing. And when we started working together in touch, that function became more and more a part of it. He didn't use the word function, but that's what I came to understand. So, for instance, in throwing a ball, what's the simplest path of action that allows that ball to gain acceleration and pass through the air in an arc, and working well. He was also he was a martial artist, so a lot of that was coming to him from the martial arts, and he was transforming that into dance and an inquiry that followed that. He had such a brilliant mind, and so thinking dance in these ways was very different than thinking dance in classical modern dance compositional forms, and even in social forms. One of the things that I found and realized after the fact was that most dance was dealing with time in human terms. And now I'm turning us toward time. Most dance was dealing with dance in human terms. The time it takes an arm to lift, the feeling that of opening the throat, lifting up, right? That kind of time. Steve wasn't dealing with dance that way, at least not when we got into contact improv. Now we were dealing with time that was accelerated time, working on a completely different scale. So I tend to talk about time in terms of scale. I tend to talk about space in terms of scale, because everything changes at different scales. Experience changes at different scales. So, so dealing with experience, and you guys have to understand, all that I'm saying to you, like that information, experience changes at different scales, is in my body experientially understood. And that ability to have it experientially, bodily felt and understood is far more important than the words I'm saying, even. But figuring out how to get there means, we spent years throwing ourselves into situations where we had no idea what the end result would be. Yet understanding that we would survive it if we could be there. If we could be in that constant inquiry of the instant now, it would open up and we would survive. We had what we needed. to survive. And I think that's what Steve brought to it, was you've got what you need to survive this. You know, he would say things like, we were born in a sea of gravity. Our bodies understand gravity on, without even thinking about it. Generations and generations we have. So really starting there as a core principle. If you can experience gravity, and I want you to know, he said all of that, and then it took me until the 90s, and we're talking from the 70s to the 90s, so a good 20 years, if not 30 years, close to 30 years. It took me that long to realize that the experience of gravity, that I could experience it in lots of different ways, but the experience that was critical to dancing was the experience of gravity that is on the scale of the very, very small. So I started teaching people to be able to disassemble, to be able to feel themselves and how weight falls to the underside. Steve's words taken from the martial arts, weight falls to the underside. But that required shifting attentional scale. Time also requires shifting attentional scale in order to come to the understanding that there is always somewhere to go. I understood that and now understand that in a really important way, which is as a mind body. And it took me until 2000 to start really embracing and talking about the mind body instead of the mind as a body. The mind is a body, you know, the mind body, just understanding that those things, that mind and body, if you're alive, now if you're dead, that's another story. Or if they stop, if they freeze you in an instant, you know, with a photograph, for instance, we can separate the mind from the body and just see a body. But the mind body exists in a living being, and that living being is in time. If you look up and study time, you find out that time is only known because of change. Time is understood as duration. So the closer you get to an instant, the closer you get to no time. The closer you get to no time, the interesting thing is, experientially, time opens up. As you get closer and closer to no time, time opens up. And it's opening up not just as a body, it's opening up as a mind. The mind that is time opens up. I just did a quick study to see where current studies of time and experience were at, and came across an article. It has been understood since the 50s, and I'm trying to think of the name of the I'm sorry, guys. I am so bad at recalling names. I'm trying right in this moment to think of the name of the man who originally studied how much bits of information we could hold in our attention in any moment. And I almost have his name, but not quite. I'm sure you can look it up. 7 to 9 bits of information. I wanted to check and see, since it's been so long and so much psychology has been based on that, where it is now. And I just came across an essay that was looking at, sorry, I am now going to my notes, that was looking at time as it functions for decision-making processes. And they wanted to know how limited is our capacity. And what they found, the conscious mind is, and this has to do with conscious mind, has a very limited capacity. They say we found that the capacity of cognitive control was approximately 3 to 4 bits per second. BPS, I think bits per second, but I don't know that BPS actually says bits per second. It's BPS, whatever that is, but let's imagine it's a moment. Demonstrating that cognitive control is a higher level function, has a remarkably low capacity. Well, we know that they were studying people in what we might call human time. The time that humans in their normal state are experiencing things and thinking about what we can do. But, you know, if there's always somewhere to go, you have to be accelerated and working in a much lower time sense. So the more accelerated your attention, the slower time can get. When you're dancing with someone, you can accelerate time. When you're meditating or thinking deeply, you can accelerate time. When you're in a car accident and you're under the influence of adrenaline, you can accelerate, not time, but you accelerate your experience of time. And time slows down. I can tell you that in my experience, I have been able to slow time so to the degree that I was able to move faster than the signal of pain was able to move within my own body. So I could experience something with absolutely no pain. And I was very accelerated. I could tell the details. I could be present. That requires a great deal of presence. A willingness not to avoid, but to go toward. Anyway, in dance, we go toward. So let's talk about time and the experience of time. The way I framed it and understand it in Nitaism, when I train dancers. I was just talking about this, Cynthia. You were probably with me talking about the ship of time in San Pancho, Mexico. Time, think of a sea of time. The whole sea is time, the moment now. you and your ability to experience. So attention is a tiny little boat or in that massive sea. That boat is moving forward. So it's got the bow of the boat is cutting through the waves, and it's got the helm, the back of the boat. I hope I'm getting my terms right. So as I'm going through, cutting through the water, the bow is pushing time. It's cutting through time, but in cutting through it, it pushes it. And there is a lip at the front of that boat. And that lip of time is a compression of the moment that is about to come. It is a compression of all the possibilities that this now offers. Going around the boat, there are all these bow waves where that compression is now moving across the boat, right, like this. My face being the front of the boat, and they're moving like this. And all of that is what you get to know if you can attend to it. Now, if you are not paying very much, if you're in human time, your boat might be really small. It's a small little boat, so there's barely any bow waves. This guy says 3 to 4, right? And then there's the wake, and that's what's happened in the past. If you are present in the moment now, not in the future, not in the past, but right in this instant now, the boat becomes very large. That is the experience of time opening up. The boat becomes very large. The more accelerated you are, the larger your boat becomes. So the faster you can be in attention, and I'm not talking fast in terms of adrenaline. I'm talking about a kind of cognitive expansion. It's like the difference between looking at one thing and looking at everything in one moment. The thing opens up. And all of a sudden, you start to notice the relationships of things. And noticing the relationship of things allows you to have choice. One of the things you notice is what's possible in the next moment. But you're also noticing what is present right now, what's happening right now. And it's experiential noticing. So the capacity of 7 to 9, which in everyday terms, when time is passing horizontally this way, If we think 7 to 9 bits of information happening over a duration, this is my duration, and I have 7 to 9 bits of information here. That duration in human time, this instant and this instant and this instant, this instant, this instant, this, or these going in to get milk in the grocery store, this much, you walk in the door, you barely notice what's going on. You barely notice the guy behind the counter. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. You're intent on where you're going. You've got an agenda, especially if you have to hurry. So that duration, if it is turned into the present moment, now you've got 7 to 9 bits of information horizontally. And that 7 to 9, 7 to 9, 7 to 9, 7 to 9, 7 to 9 means you've got much greater capacity over the same duration to know what's happening. Right? We want to dance that way because it's in that capacity that we have choice. There you have the ship of time, or the teeny tiny little boat. What do we call a small boat? A shell or something. I can't remember what they call a teeny tiny little boat. I think they call it a shell. Okay, so I think that's enough for now. It's a very deep subject, especially if one really studies it experientially. I guess I can leave us with a story. Early days of contact. Steve would sometimes come with me when I drove from Bennington College to Oberlin College to dance with my boyfriend, Kurt Siddle, and Nancy Stark-Smith. We were contact was brand spanking new, and we wanted to work on it. So, and sometimes Steve would join us. This time Steve hadn't. And I had a great big Dodge Coronet 440. It's like a boat of a car. It was the 60s, no, 70s, early 70s. But the car was a boat. And I drove very fast, and I was doing at least 90, 95 on the freeway. It was early morning, so almost nobody was on the road and the freeway, and I was just jetting there. It was like a 5-hour drive. It was not a small drive. And there was a road closure, a detour. So I had to take this detour. I took the detour, and as I was going far too fast for this car to be able to manage a two-lane road. And it went around a curve. On my left was a cliff that went down to a stream. On the right was the other half of the cliff that went up to who knows what, a wall. And I had to move between these two things. And my car was not making the turn. So I had to do this. There was plenty of time. I have been doing contact improvisation a lot. I've been dancing and dancing a lot. And my time sense easily just opened up. And I had all the time I needed to navigate this way and this way, tires screeching. I'm sure it felt like that. If you were to see it, it was like in seconds. But for me, I was just inside moving this. And I came out of that having had so much fun. I mean, it was death defying, but it was also fun. It was like, wow. like a dance. So that was when I started paying attention to time. I realized that was a dance. That was me within a contact relationship with the world. When I say there's always somewhere to go, I do not mean that in every instance you will make the turn. You're more likely to make the turn, let me say, if you open up. But if you can experience, there's always somewhere for attention to go. Oh, physical attention to go. So I take great what do you call it? I feel peace with that. I feel like there's always something that there's never the end. Even if you're facing a brick wall, there's always somewhere to go. Because we are mind bodies. We're never just one. Okay? Questions? I think we've done it. Yeah? Yeah, more than done it. Comments?
Nita, I understand that in my model, in my world, one way to expand time is to actually stop being one and attending different times and different places, so to say. When I experience myself as many, this is one way of expansion, but seems like talking about one more expansion of or deeper time, which I don't understand. Maybe I missed or I missed. Is
I
it?
think you're absolutely right, Alex. When you become more than one, simply one, start that process. So me being a car, being a road, being cliffs, absolutely critical to that expansion. Me being my partner. Did I interrupt you? Did you have something more?
No, but it felt like you found or you see one like two measurements. These the amount of me noticing different me's and also going deeper into this speed of attention. I don't know, like that's the other story of highlighting the speed or speeding up each of the parts, whatever it is.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. The
That's the question.
ability to not be ahead or behind. It
Yeah,
is
that's
the ability to not be thinking ahead or thinking behind yourself. And that requires a lot of attentional skill. I mean, it requires that you not be commenting on the moment now. You cannot experience the moment now and comment on it. You can't be, going around that bend I was talking about and doing it finesse, commenting on, oh God, I could end up over that cliff. Think that way. You have to be as, and I work a lot with the word as. You have to be as the cliff and the road and the you have there is this no comment that seems to be really significant. As with in dancing with someone, no comment there. The comment is in the way of the experience, and and it gets completely in the way of knowing anything, and it makes time chunky. So chunky time, thin slicing time. I was talking about thin slicing time. I didn't use that term, but I would. This is thin slice time as opposed to chunky time. Did I make things more complex or easier?
No, but I'm just sorry. I'm taught as mathematician, and I always remind myself that time is like vice versa. You get used to look at time as something that really exists, and we get the speed out of it, like speed and tension, blah blah blah. But in fact, it's the opposite. We have the speed and the amount of speed multiplied by amount of calculations is actually time. So we derive the time out of our speed, and working on the speed is working on time, actually.
Yeah, and this is kind of difficult because Einstein's time was space. Time and space were inseparable. So time is only known because of what happens in space, change in space. And change in space is known because of time. You know, they're inseparable. Experientially, we do things a little differently than in the solely physical world because we can shift scales. So, I mean, but it's very similar in the sense that the faster my attention goes, the closer to thin slicing I get, the more I'm able to thin slice, the more I'm able to, you know, if I'm sitting meditation thinking about how long it has been, you know that I'm in chunky time. And most human time, as I describe it, is chunky. The comfort level of time is fairly chunky. But that doesn't mean, I mean, I think experience changes how much we can know in any moment. And I guess that's what I'm advocating here, is that experience. I mean, your attentional capacity to open time, to accelerate and participate in the present moment now, to suspend thought so that you can think many thoughts at one time. I think they're wrong. I think they have not had the experience. I think researchers that say 2 to 3 bits of, or 3 to 4 bits of per second, or BPS, bits of information that in cognitive processing, those folks have never had the experience of expansion within the brain that happens when you realize you can think many more thoughts in one moment. But you're not commenting on them and picking one or two out and saying, this is what's important. This is what's important. You're able to hold it, suspend it in this this dimensional configuration within. That's from an experiencer perspective. Anybody have any other questions? All of you. Any comment?
Experience. We are looking at experience like in a practical way. If you're a physician, a mathematician, everything needs to be concrete, explained. So, and I'm very passionate about physics as well. I love physics. But the thing that experience is physical is metaphysical too. It's very personal, this relationship to your experience. You accept the physicality of it, but there is also something else that many of us are trying to explain, to reach, to share. That is something that, what you just said, Nita, is like the impossible can happen. That's what you told us.
That is in many ways.
Yeah, things that, we have been trained, educated, not that way that you were mentioning,
It can't happen in human time. The impossible cannot happen in human time.
Yeah, that's the thing, because what contact taught me and was a blow, was a life-changing experience, that kind of practice of my senses. So the real attention on what all my senses are sensing, perceiving now. And when you were saying, when you were telling the accident by car, I think it's the combination of the cognitive brain together also to our lower brain, our stem, our long nerves. So letting them to be alive and perceive. That's my, what I was imagining you in this kind of, the brain goes everywhere in the body. So you were ready to shift the way you had to shift because you are fully connected. And I feel, so this is so opening, and it's an experience and a practice that never ends. I feel we're still searching.
And the Nita that I was there in that relationship with the road.
Yeah.
I was the tire.
Beautiful.
Right? The tire was here. The tire, that the friction happening there. Feeling every little sneezing lately. I don't know why. But and
the question,
not after the fact, but in the fact of the instant. Not as remembering it, but as being it in that moment.
Yeah.
That creates extraordinary skill.
Extraordinary, like superhero, something.
Well, some of the things that people do physically is extraordinary.
It's true. Yeah, it's extreme.
And they have to go into that level of time experience, whether or not they can talk about it.
Yeah. The question that I was kind of focusing my own research is that kind of ability of connect to our vestibular ability and the vestibular nerve, those kind of area that is our connection with gravity. So I wanted to just as a question also, because I don't want to be too simplistic. I mean, we can be, but I'm kind of landing on that kind of, is it the vestibular ability, the lab, the tonic lab, all these elements are the basic that is underlying all our action. The awareness of gravity is from, since we were a cell, two cell, but yeah, the question is it just that? If we do focus, I have the answer all question. Let's train all of us in this vestibular awareness, and everything will be the same. But yeah, I just, yeah.
I would not be again. I would agree with you that if we were to train kids in school to be able to know what they know, to recognize what they know, that would be extraordinary. We don't. We tend to train kids to know what they don't know. And a great deal of that is, requires suppression of what they do know.
Yeah. Gosh. Thank you. Yeah.
So for us, training dancers to know what they know, that's very critical. That's very important. Everything else becomes a kind of cultural suppression. I wanted to read something from Einstein. Do I have it here? Let me see if I have it here. I was reading Einstein and loving it. Time is physical. Einstein's general theory of relativity established time as a physical thing, as a part of space-time, the gravitational field produced by massive objects. The presence of mass warps space-time, and that's not what I wanted. That's not what I want. It said this beautiful thing. Where did I find that? That's not it. Oh, you guys, I'm so sorry. I can't find, I must have put it someplace else. Yeah, I must have put, oh, I know where I have it. Hang on. I do know where I have it. Okay. No, this is Heisenberg. It's not Einstein. He's talking about quantum theory. And which is if you don't know, the experiment of quantum physics was when they came to understand that a particle could show up as that when they split a particle, say a photon, that what happened was that something could show up as a particle or as a wave. And I think it was a photon they split, but I may be wrong there. But the fact of something showing up as a particle or a wave appeared to be determined by whether it was observed or not. So, and this is Heisenberg who had theories about this. We can no longer speak of the behavior of the particle independently of the process of observation. So being there. When you think observation, think being there. As a final consequence, the natural laws formulated mathematically in quantum theory no longer deal with the elementary particles themselves, but with our knowledge of them. Was someone there experiencing it? Nor is it any longer possible to ask whether or not these particles exist in space and time objectively. When we speak of the picture of nature in the exact science of our age, and he's speaking in the early 20th century, We do not mean a picture of nature so much as a picture of our relationships with nature. Science no longer confronts nature as an objective observer, but sees itself as an actor in this interplay between man and nature. The scientific method of analyzing, explaining, and classifying has become conscious of its limitations, which arise out of the fact that by its intervention, science alters and refashions the object of investigation. In other words, method and object can no longer be separated. And that is to say, Monica, that what you think you will get, in a sense, in the sense that if you're observing it from a particular perspective, the particle will show up as something that you may be surprised that it showed up in this way, but it's within the logic of your observation. You have altered that moment to produce that object. Experientially, for sure. The closer we get to the instant now, or the thin slicing in our experience, the less we have no time. We cannot do that and have comment, have expectation. You cannot enter the moment with expectation. Okay.
I love it. Nita, do you think it might be time?
You might need to do
Yeah,
a
it could be.
time practices too on the next one.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, thank you,
right.
everyone. It's fun to talk in these realms, to think in these realms, to get pushed by you. Your questions are important to me, and your observations are important to me, and where you're coming from. Monica, are you a dancer or a scientist or both?
Both. I study environmental science, and
Perfect.
I'm a dance artist, producer as well at times when it's possible, when fundings happen.
Great,
Yeah.
great.
But now basically
Welcome.
I'm mainly working in the field of movement and somatic
Great.
practice mainly. Yeah.
Welcome
Yeah.
to Alex, who is also a scientist and science mind dancer. And to all the rest of us who are fascinated by this meeting of what it can be, what it is that dance reveals about being human.